Happy Thanksgiving, one and all, and welcome to our Thanksgiving week quarterfinal version of our podcast featuring GeauxPreps and Crescent City Sports. Ken Trahan, along with my good friend Hunter Bauer. And again, Hunter, happy Thanksgiving to you and yours, and I hope it's blessed and wonderful, enjoyable, and don't eat too much.
Ken, it's always a pleasure to get on this podcast and talk football with you, and happy Thanksgiving to you and your family as well. And that also signals quarterfinal playoff games, and this is the round that everybody I think strives to get to more than the championship matchups. Everybody wants to talk about practicing on Thanksgiving and getting ready for that big quarterfinal matchup, and we have a lot of big matchups this week to talk about.
And by the way, got a lot of comments on last week's, even though we posted it late, got a ton of comments. And what about our team? It's all good. So that's what we're here to do, to give you the best possible analysis we can. And we do love and appreciate your schools and your teams. All right, let's start with non-select Division I in the quarterfinal round. The number 1 seed, Ruston, at home against the number 9 seed, Walker. Let me preface this by saying a lot of people have asked me, well, what about so-and-so's not at home this week? Why is that? Well, the rule was changed after last year that the quarterfinals will feature the highest seed at home. Frankly, I like it. Frankly, I think the higher seed should always be at home in every round. I think you play the season for that personally, but at least this year, the only round that the higher seed's not going to be at home is in the regional round. So in the quarterfinals, higher seed's home. Ruston at home against Walker. The Bearcats barely survived a real scare from a good Westgate team. We talked about that last week, but they got through, and that might help them. Of course, Walker, very impressive, went to North Shore and basically shut them down and just gave up a safety and a good win. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no doubt. And, like we said, I know Destrehan's the king of the hill right now, but Ruston's that team that they want to get back to the state championship and prove that they're one of the best, if not the best team in the state. Going up against a Walker team that's never been to the quarterfinals. This is Walker's first appearance this late in the postseason, so new ground for them, kind of old ground, old hat for Ruston. It's going to be hard to beat the Bearcats at home, especially on a pretty long road trip up there to Northeast Louisiana. But look what Walker's done this far. They've gotten this far, so you can't really count them out, so to speak. And then, looking down at the rest of the bracket, look at Mandeville, number 21 in seeded Mandeville, upset St. Amant 42-21 last week, going up against a good airline squad that has a lot of great athletes. Again, Destrehan and Zachary, man, what a matchup. I think that's going to be a slobber knocker in itself. And then you've got the battle of Dutchtown and Central. Central's the Cinderella story of this bracket and what they've been able to do. They upset Neville last week. So a lot of the great 4 matchups in this division. But again, I think the road goes through Ruston and Destrehan, and if they can get beat this week, then who knows? It's the quarterfinals.
Well, I think that, as I mentioned, Ruston getting that real scare, barely surviving, probably helps them, I would think, based upon what transpired. The competition was obviously really good. Central, a huge win, but the real Cinderella is Mandeville because they're the lowest seed at 21.
Absolutely.
And I think they've got a real shot at Airline. Airline, as we always talk about, can score, and I thought Southside
will
pull an upset last week, but credit to the Vikings. They win by 1, but they got another tough test because Mandeville's playing really well. Craig Jones, a really good offensive coach, and this is going to be one of the better games. And as you mentioned, Destrehan Zachary, to me, that's the best matchup. I mean, this is a state championship type of matchup in the quarterfinals is what we're looking at here.
Yeah, no doubt. And, I was talking to somebody about that matchup yesterday, and I said, it's kind of weird to me. Zachary's kind of flown under the radar and not really a lot of talk about them, and not a lot of talk about this matchup. And I think it goes to show how people are treating this matchup like it's not a big deal. And I think it is a big deal. I think it's probably one of the best matchups in the state. You got a really good offense on both sides of the ball going to go at it. The game's at Destrehan. Can Zachary, I think Zachary can play anywhere, but definitely the matchup that I would want to go see if I'm a high school football fan this week. I think it's going to be a really close game.
All right, non-select Division II, North DeSoto, the number 1 seed against Iowa. Of course, North DeSoto is at home, coming off of a state championship game appearance a year ago. The defending state champion, Lutcher, at home against Opelousas, who upset West Feliciana last week. Then you've got the number 3 seed Assumption that a lot of people probably don't know a lot about. at home against number 22 Northwest, another lower seed, a Cinderella team that's played very well and pulling the upset not once but twice. And then, of course, Cecilia, the number 2 at the bottom of the bracket, coming off a 70-point performance, hosting Jennings. All right, so what stands out to you in this non-select Division II bracket?
Well, certainly, the rematch between North DeSoto and Iowa from last year's semifinal, I think that sticks out. North DeSoto's been the preseason favorite, I think, since the season started. But Iowa's, they could be one of those upset-minded teams, and I think they have a really good shot of going up there and competing with North DeSoto. They competed with North DeSoto last year in the semifinal game. Of course, North DeSoto is very much more experienced this year, but the matchup that really stands out to me, Ken, is that Opelousas and Lutcher match. I think that promises to be a good one. And whoever wins that game gets a really good matchup between the North DeSoto and Iowa winner. But man, hats off to Jimmy Zachary and what they've done over there. First quarterfinal appearance since 1994. Of course, Lutcher's been there. They know how to win, especially in recent years. And Dwayne Jenkins is such a great coach, knows how to pull his team together for a big matchup. But I think that promises to be a good one. Opelousas does have to go to Lutcher, so I think that's going to go against them. But at this point of the season, teams have traveled. They're going to do their best no matter where they play. But that matchup stands out, and then the Jennings Cecilia matchup stands out. Never count out Jennings. I don't care what their record is or what seed they are. They know how to play playoff football.
Well, I just think Lutcher Opelousas is a really good game. I think it'll be a very low-scoring game. Two really good defenses.
Yep.
Lutcher's defense is superb. Hard to pick against North DeSoto. They've just played too well. Cecilia, to me, look, I've got to like Cecilia. I know Jennings can compete, but I certainly like Cecilia. And then Assumption is a team that you absolutely better pay attention to. They beat Lutcher this year, and their only 2 losses were to St. James and E.D. White. So the Mustangs are really good. So, and Northwest, as I mentioned, has been a really good story with pulling 2 upsets against higher seeds in the first 2 rounds. So, again, an intriguing bracket. Non-select Division III, Gina, the number 1 seed, they get a traditional power in a meet at home. Very dangerous Bogalusa Lumberjacks team making a long trip north to Union Parish. Totally different styles in that game. St. James at home against Manny. This one will be shown live on CrescentCitySports.com Friday night. Really good matchup between a North Louisiana Power and a South Louisiana Power. And then the Pine Raiders and a really good coach in Bradley Seal making the trip north to face a always tough Sterlington Panthers team. What about this bracket?
Well, certainly you have to talk about the St. James Manny matchup, and that's awesome that it's going to be on Crescent City Sports, because if you're a high school football fan, you need to tune in and watch this matchup. Just 2 perennial powers. They know how to get to the Superdome. They've been to the Superdome. Man, what Dylan Baird has done at Manny, people wrote them off at the beginning of the year after a pretty bad loss in a jamboree. Of course, you can't ever count jamborees, but a lot of people have kind of written the Tigers off, and they've kind of flown under the radar a little bit. But man, what they've done down the stretch and up until this point, they haven't allowed a single point in the playoffs thus far in the first 2 rounds. So their defense is playing really well. The offense is playing really well right now. But look what St. James has done too. Pretty good resume. They know how to win in these types of games. I think it's going to be a close matchup. And then probably the other one that stands out to me, Ken, is the Bogalusa Union Parish matchup. What a long trip that is for Coach Crutchfield and company. But I think Bogalusa certainly has the talent to advance to the semifinals should they upset the number 4 Union Parish Farmers. And then, Gina at a meet, I think that's an interesting matchup. Gina's in rare company. They, haven't gotten to the quarterfinals a lot in their history. So, going up against a strong A meet team, that's going to be an interesting matchup. And then, but, certainly this is a wide open division, but a lot of people point to Sterlington maybe as the favorite. But I think, any one of these teams has a chance of advancing and winning a state championship this year. That's how much talent's in this division.
Yeah, there's a good district in South Louisiana. District 7, 3A has good teams. Pine, Jules Sumner, Bogalusa. There's good teams in this league. And I think that matchup that you just referenced between Bogalusa and Union Parish is most intriguing because of the styles. Bogalusa is a spread offense with a great quarterback in Ashton Levi. Union's going to ground and pound it right at you. It's a matter of style and whose style prevails in that game. Union Parish has been there, and they're at home. So slight edge there, but I would not sell this team from Bogalusa short in that matchup. And, of course, they meet the state championship program many times over. Gina's been great this year, but they're going to have to play well to be able to get past a meet and the tradition they have and how accustomed they are to being in this position and winning. Of course, in Division 4 Select, Logansport, the number 1 seed, at home against Welsh. Then you've got Jeanerette, the 5 seed, traveling to Haynesville. They make that long trip from Bayou Country to Northeast Louisiana. Oak Grove at home against Mangum. That's a good matchup. And then another good matchup is Homer at Kentwood. I like these matchups. I think this is a pretty good bracket. I mean, I do like Logansport at home, but Welsh has scored 42 and 54 points in 2 playoff games. Jeanerette, for some people, is an unknown. Haynesville's at home and a traditional power. Certainly give a slight edge to Haynesville there. Oak Grove, Mangum. I mean, these are 2 really good programs. And
Yeah.
Mangum has scored 107 points in 2 playoff games. So I wouldn't sell them short. And then Homer's been there, done that as a championship program most recently, and Kentwood is a multiple championship program. Of course, the game's under the tank in Kentwood, which might give a slight edge to the Kangaroos. Your thought?
Yeah, and it's crazy that Oak Grove and Kenwood are possibly going to have to try to stay away from the upsets this week. You can't count out Mangum and Homer. I know Homer struggled as of late in the last couple of weeks, but just look what they've done as a program the last 2 years. They can get to the state championship game. They've proved it before. But Kentwood, much improved, knows how to win multiple championships. The Oak Grove and Mangum game, that really intrigues me, especially of how many points Mangum has been scoring in the playoffs in the first 2 rounds. But again, Oak Grove, I think my favorite to win it. They're just playing really strong right now. And that Logansport Welsh matchup, yeah, you want to pick Logansport as the favorite. What does Welsh look like in a long shot from the outside? Yes. Kind of a long road trip. Can they go up to Logansport and upset the Tigers? They're probably the team out of that quadrant that has the best chance to do that. And then certainly Jeanerette. I think this is their first quarterfinal appearance since the 1990s, going up against a strong Haynesville Golden Tornado team, 7:30 start. So that's going to be a little different for them as well. But then again, Ken, this is why you play these games. You never know what the upset might be. But that lower bracket, Oak Grove, Mangum, Homer, and Kenwood, it doesn't get better than that. And whoever comes out of that bracket is certainly a favorite to win the state title this year.
Yeah, those are really good programs. All right, let's flip it to the select side, Division 1. This game will be played on Saturday night at Strawberry Stadium in Hammond. The number 1 seed, Holy Cross, against the number 8 seed, Acadiana. Again, different styles. Holy Cross has everything on offense. As good an offense as there is in the state, led by Cole Canatella. And Acadiana, we all know what this program is, where they've been and what they've done. And they had to get past Karen Crow again. 2 teams that knew each other extremely well. Now you get 2 teams that really don't know each other that well, and it's a strange dynamic being on a Saturday night. So I don't know what to expect. It's a battle of wills. Holy Cross is going to score on anybody because they're that good offensively. Acadiana's chance to win here is clear, and that is to win up front and keep the football, and that's what makes this such an intriguing matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Acadiana is probably the strongest 8 seed out of any of the brackets this year, Ken. And but again, you got to stop the Holy Cross scoring attack. I think Holy Cross can score at will. Is going to score at will. It's just a matter of can Acadiana stop that. But then Holy Cross has to go up against that Acadiana offense that can score as well. I know that it was a 14-7 game last week with Karen Crow, but that was to be expected, especially how similar those 2 teams were. That's probably your matchup of the week. I really have to believe. I know a lot of people are talking about the Catholic and John Curtis matchup, which is going to be a great match in itself.
Mm-hmm.
But that Holy Cross and on a Saturday night, that's going to be awesome. I know a lot of people were debating about that, but I think it's unique to go and play on a Saturday night in front of a big crowd at a college stadium. It's an experience that those kids will never forget either way. So but that's certainly the matchup I think people have to point towards this week.
Matt McCullough does a great job. Scott Watney's done a great job in his first year. And, of course, Holy Cross played John Curtis earlier this year, so they've seen the veer, but did give up a lot in that game. So it'll be interesting to see. I think this is a a game that could be a toss-up game. But, Holy Cross being a home team and can score. Again, this will be a really good football game with 2 contrasting styles. Edna Carr, demonstrative in their win last week. They get Alexandria, and you can't sell Ash short because of what they did last week. They came to the New Orleans area and shut out a good
Absolutely.
football team in Brother Martin. That was impressive. Thomas Bachman's team did a great job. So, look, Carr playing at Morris Jeff Stadium, can't pick against Carr, but I would not sell Alexandria short based on what I saw last week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's been several instances this year, I believe, where cars kind of come out slow to begin the game and they've had to build up to that momentum and get to going. I don't know if you can do that against this Alexandria team, especially what we've seen last week against number 4, Brother Martin, and shutting that team out. Thomas Bachman, he's just another coach that always has his team prepared to play for these type of games. He gets them up really well and is able to coach them for this type of environment. So definitely a
Mm-hmm.
matchup that you can't just write Alexandria off. I think this is going to be in the Cars' biggest challenge thus far in their
Mm-hmm.
first 2 games in the playoff.
And you mentioned John Curtis Christian at Catholic at Memorial Stadium, rematch of a game last year at Memorial, which John Curtis won on the way to the state championship. Again, both of these teams can score. I mean, that's what you look at. The offenses have been superb. The question is, who plays better defense? I mean, that's going to determine this
That's
game.
right.
John Curtis said, I mean, those rematch games are tough. They had to play, throw the records out. Anybody that hasn't seen St. Augustine this year doesn't understand how talented they are despite their record. And Curtis had to hold them off last week. Catholic, of course, very impressive against John Ehret. Catholics at home, revenge motive. Curtis is really good. And hard to pick against Curtis, even though they're on the road. But Catholics played a tough schedule. They got a 4-year starter in Daniel Beal at quarterback. Dagan Bruno is a
Yeah.
great quarterback at Curtis. I just think points are going to be scored in this game. And, again, I think Curtis is on a mission. It'd be hard to pick against him, but I do not sell the Bears short. And they're the higher seed, and they're at home.
Yeah, absolutely. And these teams, I think, share similar traits in that they kind of struggled early in the beginning of the season. I think both of them lost 2 straight games, but then they kind of came into their own as the season progressed, and as they got into district play and then into the playoffs. So again, another set of teams that I think are very similar to each other. Again, like you said, offenses can score. They have really great quarterbacks. It's going to be a close game either way. I don't think the travel is going to be going to affect the outcome of this game. God, what a game! And I mean,
Yeah.
rematches of state championship games and semifinal games and whatever you may, regular season games. 2 perennial teams are going to go at it Friday night, and man, what a treat for those in attendance.
Then you got number 7, St. Paul's, and 18 seed Archbishop Rummel. This game will be on radio as part of Ken Trahan's original prep football report Friday night. St. Paul's very strong in a win over Tioga last week. And Rummel, as predicted, went to number 2 Captain Shreve and won 13-3. Rummel very resilient, has played a very tough schedule. Again, throw the record out based upon who they are and the injuries they've had. It's a good football team. St. Paul's solid as a rock, well coached, at home, only one loss. 2 Christian Brothers schools that know each other very well. They face off in a jamboree every year for many, many years now. That game was won by Rummel 13-10 back in August. Totally different time now and a totally different game. But again, this is another one of those that for me is a picket game.
Absolutely. Well, for a New Orleans school to travel to Shreveport 2 weeks in a row and pick up pretty impressive victories, you can't discount them in this game. And, kind of got a feeling, Ken. I'll go ahead and make a prediction. I think Roma's going to upset in this matchup and get to the semifinals. I think they're just playing really good ball right now. Not discounting St. Paul's and what they've done. They've had a really great season, and I think it's going to be a really close game. But I think Roma's just playing so well right now. Look, to limit Captain Shreve to 3 points and what Captain Shreve did during the season, and it just was impressive, especially when they had to go up to Shreveport for a second week in a row. That's a long trip, Ken, to back and forth from the northwest corner of the state. But certainly, like I said, either way, I think it's going to be a close matchup between the 2 teams. But I don't know. I'm kind of rooting for Rommel and the 18 seed, and for them maybe to make it one more week here in the playoffs.
Huge respect for Ken Sears, who at St. Paul's has done a phenomenal job. Nick Monica at Rummel, and I think it comes down to quarterback play. Brennan Kime for St. Paul's,
Yeah.
General Buggage for Rummel, and who plays best in terms of who wins that game. All right, so we go to Select Division 2. The number 1 is St. Thomas More at home against St. Michael the Archangel. Really good matchup in the New Orleans area. Number 5, Archbishop Shaw taking on John F. Kennedy at Pan American Stadium. Then you got McDonough 35 out of New Orleans, the 11 at number 3, Lafayette Christian, and Turlings Catholic, the 7, to Bayou Land against E.D. White, the 2 seed. E.D. White gut check last week. They had to rally late to beat a good De La Salle team.
Yeah,
McDonough 35 went to Lake Charles and your neck of the woods and just absolutely, took apart St. Louis Catholic by 30. John F. Kennedy in a game seen live on CrescentCitySports.com. Extremely impressive against Vanderbilt Catholic. Archbishop Shaw won a tough game against Evangel, and of course St. Thomas More rolled. St. Michael rolled. I'll start. St. Thomas More to me still clearly a favorite against St. Michael. I expect them to win, and certainly a ton of respect for the Warriors, but tough task here.
absolutely.
Shaw and John F. Kennedy, somebody's going to get to the semis, and these are 2 emerging programs. They're both really good. Shaw maybe has played the tougher schedule, but John F. Kennedy's really talented. And I think that game is a toss-up type of game, frankly. And RSL Page has done a great job at JFK, and Hank Tierney's a legendary coach at Shaw. And I think quarterback play is going to be huge here. Lafayette Christian, obviously, at home is a favorite over McDonough 35. So good. And, of course, the Ron Eagles have nothing to lose, and they played extremely well last week. And Frank Dykes has done a great job, but certainly like Juwan Johnson. And going for a record, by the way, this week for the Knights.
Yep.
And then, good matchup. Turlings Catholic, good team, particularly offensively. And, boy, they had a tough matchup last week with the traditional Power and Madison Prep and snuck it out 31-30. But the same thing was true of E.D. White, who had to score very late and then held off De La Salle. So that's a good matchup, too. Anything stand out for you here?
Yeah, the separation between Turlings and E.D. White, I think, is paper thin. I think that's going to be an interesting matchup to watch. Certainly, you want to give E.D. White the edge, just how they've been playing and who they've been playing against. But I think Turlings Catholic, proved their mettle against a really good Madison Prep squad last week. Turlings goes to E.D. White, so that's going to be an interesting matchup. Yeah, it's going to be uphill climb for McDonough and St. Michael in their matchups against St. Thomas More and LCA. A lot of people are predicting those 2 teams to get back to the Superdome this year. But like you said, props to Coach Daggs over there at McDonough. I don't think anybody expected them to go over and put 53 points on St. Louis in over here in Lake Charles last week, and then certainly shout out to St. Michael. Man, what Archbishop Shaw did in that game against Evangel, that game was going back and forth the whole matchup and seemed like it. And but Shaw was in full control, and I think that's going to be key in this contest against John F. Kennedy. Kennedy certainly has one of the best defenses in the state. Limited Vanderbilt to 6 points last week. So John F. Kennedy certainly has the talent and has the ability to go up against a good Shaw team and advance to the semifinals. But certainly, you want to see great matchups, and we're hoping that the LCA McDonough and then the St. Thomas More St. Michael are really good matchups in their own right. But that Turlings E.D. White game, I think that's what sticks out to me the most, Ken. I think that's going to be the matchup of the week in this bracket, and certainly going to provide a lot of fans with, I think, a lot of offensive firepower out of those 2 teams. Really good quarterbacks, really good offensives, and we'll see what happens.
Yep, I think the Turlings Catholic E.D. White matchup and the John F. Kennedy Archbishop Shaw matchups are the best. Mine Darrensburg for Kennedy is a really good quarterback. The same is true for Mason Wilson at Archbishop Shaw. Both dual threat guys and good players, and that's an intriguing matchup to say the least for people here in the New Orleans area that are looking at these programs and seeing them emerge and become powers. All right, so we go to Select Division 3. 2-time defending state champion St. Charles Catholic gets Louis Cook and Notre Dame, who's won his 400th game recently. Poor Notre Dame has run into St. Charles Catholic, 4 straight times now in the playoffs and lost every time in competitive fashion, and they have to go to Laplace again. Lake Charles College Prep, a Cinderella at 21 against a very powerful U-High team, the 4 seed. Newman, the 3 seed, gets a traditional strong program and Episcopal. Travis Bushwell's done a great job there. Nelson Stewart at Newman. And Parkview Baptist, a Renaissance program, really coming on strong. But they got to make a long trip to Shreveport to play a really talented Calvary Baptist team. All right, so what stands out in this bracket to you?
Yeah, certainly, that St. Charles Notre Dame game. St. Charles is not going to be able to rest this week. I promise you that. Notre Dame's going to bring all they can against the Comets. I know the Comets have had their number over the last several years, but certainly a traditional quarterfinal matchup between these 2 teams. That Parkview Calvary game kind of stands out to me. Look what Parkview Baptist did against the the state runner-ups from last year in Dunham, 39-32 matchup last week, and what was a really good matchup between those two teams. I know it's a long trip for Parkview, but I think they're going to be a really good foe for Calvary, if anything. And then, you got a Newman squad, I think, that's had one of their best squads in several years, going up a really good Episcopal squad that a lot of people don't talk about and kind of write them off. But Episcopal knows how to win. No, Episcopal knows how to win. Certainly this late in the year. And then, have to give props to Lake Charles Prep and what they've done. We certainly talked about them at the beginning of the playoffs and how they could upset a few higher seeds, which they have done. Again, uphill climb against University Lab, but want to give props to Lake Charles Prep and what they've done. This is an interesting bracket. Again, a lot of people are looking for that St. Charles Calvary matchup, but don't count out the likes of Newman and University Lab maybe to come in and upset those going into the semifinal matchups next week.
Eli Friend's a good quarterback at Newman, and they are solid. Look, U-High is so talented on both sides of the ball. It's hard to see them not advancing. And boy, what a semifinal that would be. St. Charles Catholic has the toughest road. They got to go through Notre Dame and then through U-High in all likelihood just to get to the championship game. So, but of course, they're so solid in all phases. I'm certainly not picking against St. Charles Catholic as much as I respect the living heck out of Louis Cook and love the guy and
Absolutely.
read the book too most recently. And I've had Louis on my shows, super guy. All right, select Division 4. Intriguing. Vermilion Catholic's unbeaten is the number 1. They get Ascension Catholic at home, who scored 77 last week. Riverside Academy survived the scare from Catholic Point Coupé. They get a rematch game with St. Martin's Episcopal to be played in Metairie at St. Martin's. And then, of course, defending champion Washita Christian gets St. Mary's and Central Catholic playing Southern Lab. Don't have to travel far to Baton Rouge to play them. All right, so in this one, we saw Riverside St. Martin's. Riverside won easily earlier this year. I think this will be closer. Hard to pick against Riverside, who got a scare last week. Vermilion Catholic at home, not picking against them, even though Ascension Catholic scored a bunch of points. Central Catholic's a really good year, really good program, but Southern Lab at home, ton of talent there. And Washita Christian certainly looks like, a chalk team to me.
Yeah, certainly. Looking at that Vermilion Catholic Ascension Catholic game, Chad Elzy, I think he had a bajillion touchdowns last week. If he is on point this week, they could give Vermilion Catholic a little trouble. I don't think this is a pushover matchup for Vermilion Catholic. Ascension Catholic has proved that they can be there. Look, they scored 77 points last week. I mean, come on, folks. Let's get real here. I think this is going to be an interesting matchup. Like you said, Ken, the Riverside St. Martin's matchup, that's going to be more intriguing. I know St. Martin's is going to need a lot from Harlem Berry to be able to in order for him to run wild this week and maybe reverse that regular season loss to Riverside. Props to St. Mary's. They, from the reports I heard, they used 4 onside kickoff recoveries to beat Glenbrook last week. So strong special teams play from St. Mary's, but again, a tall order against a good OCS squad. And then again, props to Central Catholic, a 6-2 game against St. Frederick last week. It's almost like going back to the 1970s to watch that kind of matchup. But Southern Lab, they're equipped with so many weapons, and I think that's going to be the semifinal matchup between them and OCS if all things go right for those two teams. And I hate that because I wish that would be a state championship matchup. But again, this is an interesting bracket. You're going to have a strong lower side coming into the Caesar Superdome here in a couple of weeks, and then a top side that wants to prove themselves as a perennial power. Whether it be Vermilion Catholic, Ascension Catholic, Riverside, or St. Martin's. But the top 2 games in that bracket are certainly come with that Riverside and St. Martin's matchup, as well as the Vermilion Catholic, Ascension Catholic game. But, man, I just want to give props to Chad Elzy again because, I mean, he went off last week, and if he's on again this week, watch out for Vermilion Catholic.
Again, you can go to GeauxPreps.com to get a host of information all week long, scores of every sport every day that are up there on the site. It's a lot of work to do. We do that in the New Orleans area, and it's not easy to do that nightly, but we do it, and so does Hunter. Of course, we expect Hunter to be with us for a few minutes on Friday night on the original. As mentioned, we'll have Archbishop Rummel and St. Paul's game as part of the show this Friday night. but we will have a reporter at every game in the state. So you'll get reports from every game during the show, scoreboard updates as well. And we look forward to that. We hope you'll listen in. And as we mentioned, we'll have the game between St. James and Manny live on Crescent City Sports Friday night at 7 p.m. So with that, quarterfinal week is here. Looking forward to it. It's Turkey week. It's Thanksgiving week. Blessings to you and yours, Hunter. And listen, enjoy the week. And we look forward to hearing from you on Friday on the show.
Absolutely, Ken. Thanks again for this podcast. And this is one thing I'm thankful for is the relationship between GeauxPreps and Crescent City Sports. It's been great so far. Can't wait for what the future holds. And happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. And we'll talk to you all Friday night.
Thank you, Hunter.
All right.